Good morning and welcome to I'll Knit and Spin If I Want To. I'm Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and I'm going to try and answer some of your questions. It is very, very, very cold here today, so I am currently bundled up in my pink fizz sweater, which is a cashmere merino blend from La Bien-Aimée, held with their mohair. So it is very snuggly and warm, and I'm wearing it with my honey moss shawl, which is a giant shawl and delightful when it's in the single digits. I've also, of course, got on my wool socks and just trying to keep cozy today. But we've got some great questions, and I have some beginnings and some sneaky finishes to share with you. So let's jump into some questions. Question number 1 is about the Cinnabar Shawl. This knitter has tried it 3 times and failed. I'm new to Brioche and learned by making your Harlow hat. Somehow my stitch count keeps getting off. They're doing a lot of tinking and they're just having a hard time with the Brioche. So yes, Brioche especially, I love that you learned it with Harlow. I will say knitting 2-color brioche in the round tends to be a little bit easier than knitting it flat, because the rhythm of knitting it flat can catch people up sometimes. So I actually just like a week ago happened to film 2 new brioche tutorial videos. So I have linked those below for you. If you look under this video box, there's a little show description, and in there I always list all of the questions I'm answering and any links that come up during that time. So I am going to link both of those tutorials in there. There is one for Continental and English, and I just remembered I also did a bark yarn over bark, which I am guessing I just spelled it wrong. Can't talk and write at the same time. I think that's what I use in that shawl, I'm pretty sure. So I will link all 3, and that might really help you out. Sometimes we just need to see it done slowly, and hopefully being able to watch it done flat instead of in the round. In the round, knitting 2-color brioche is different than working it flat. Working it flat, it disrupts our rhythm. So when you're working 2-color brioche in the round, with one of your colors, you will always be knitting, brioche knitting, barking. With the other color, you will always be brioche purling. There's obviously exceptions to that rule depending on any fun stitch pattern that might be happening. But basic 2-color brioche, that's what you're going to be doing. When you work it flat, you have to flippy flop, and you're going to do both knits and purls with both colors. And the rhythm's different than normal stockinette that we're used to. So normal stockinette, we knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row when we're working it flat. With brioche, we actually, for like the first side, we work each side twice before turning our work. And so we'll knit 1 pass and then purl 1 pass. But then when we turn, that gets reversed and we purl the first pass and knit the second pass. So it goes like knit, purl, purl, knit, knit, purl, purl, knit. So it's just a little bit different, and it's not hard per se. You know, I think that brioche definitely gets this rap of being bad rap, of being really tricky and challenging. And I think really what it is it just messes with the rhythm we're used to. And especially if you've been knitting for a long time, I actually find it's the students in my classes that have been knitting longer that find it a bit more challenging, because your muscle memory is so good and your brain and your hands don't have to do a whole lot of chatting while you're knitting. But with brioche, it's kind of like learning all over again, because the rhythm is just a little bit different. So really it's about just slowing down. I definitely recommend employing some lifelines. That way it will make the tinking that can be so frustrating a lot easier to just tear down to a lifeline. And then you mentioned that your stitch counts keep going off. If you're struggling with your stitch counts, there's 2 things I would pay attention to. 1, make sure that when you're counting stitches, you always count. When in brioche, you have a like your stitch that's looped over your needle, but every other one has a yarn over shawl with it that's created during that slip one yarn over, and it's gonna be 2 strands of yarn, but it's still counted as 1 stitch. So don't break up those honeys. I call them my honeys. Those little star-crossed lovers, keep them together, count them as 1 stitch when you are doing those stitch counts. And where I find that people's stitch counts get messed up is actually with those increases, those bark yarn over barks. Because they're so used to now counting the stitches, like we have a single guy and then a couple and a single guy and a couple, and you get used to counting them that way. Well, with that yarn over, all of a sudden you're gonna have you're gonna have 3 stitches where once you only had 1, because you add 2 at a time. And sometimes what happens is people accidentally work 2 of those new stitches together instead of keeping them separate that first go around. This is a little bit easier to explain tutorial style than conversationally, but check out the increase tutorial as well, and then it might make sense for you. I just don't want to forget to link that one for you, but I have also linked the working brioche flat, and I hope that helps you out. I think switching over from in the round to flat can just be some growing pains there, but you'll get it. Don't give up. You can do it. All right, next question. I'm an adventurous beginner knitter looking to venture into sweater knitting. Woohoo! But I am super tall and my arms are longer than the normal person. How would you adjust a pattern for sleeve length? Thanks. I love your patterns and want to give the weekender a try. Lucky for you, changing sleeve length is probably one of the easiest modifications to make for a sweater. So if it's knit from the top down, you can simply just keep on going until you get the sleeve length you like. And then I would write a note, especially anytime as you venture into sweater knitting, whenever you try a new style, so drop shoulder, raglan, round yoke, whatever it may be, 3/4 length sleeve, bracelet length, long sleeve, make notes of how long you like your sleeves. And then you kind of know, okay, this pattern's telling me that this is an 18-inch sleeve, but I need at least another 1.5 inches on that. I want a 19.5 long sleeve for my longer arms. And so then you kind of know that already, like this is the length that's going to work really well for you. So top down, pretty easy peasy. Even if you're knitting them bottom up and then attaching them to the body, then you can really add the length. I would decide for you, you can either add the length on the cuff side or at the top before you begin the shaping. So that's something you'll want to play with to see, depending on the size of your bicep, if you want to be able to have a little more room, a little bit, keeping the top of the sleeve wider for longer, you could wait to do the shaping for a little bit. As you get more into sweater knitting, you will also be able to look at that pattern and say, okay, because I have the luxury of added length here, I can even spread my shaping out a bit, my increasing or decreasing, depending on if you're doing bottom up or top down. But if you're gonna start with the weekender, I think that is a great place to start, and I would just follow the directions as written and just add on however much length you want, and you can just try on your sweater. I always try on my sweaters for sleeve length at the end and say, okay, where do I want this to end, and then do my ribbing, because it's pretty easy. You don't even usually need to put it on waist yarn or anything. You can just try it on and stick your arm through with your needle still on there to get it to the length you want. All right, 2 questions. I've never used Shorties before. Can you knit the whole sleeve with them, or do you have to eventually switch to double pointed needles anyway? So they are referring to the little shorty needles I have talked about on here. I wonder if I have a pair right here. Let me see if I do. I have interchangeable ones, but I think I bought one fixed needle shorty just to see if I would like them before investing in a whole interchangeable set. Sorry, my needles just came out funny. I can take care of this later. Okay. So let me see if I have my, where would I have put that? No. Ah, I do have them. So this is a little shorty set. This one's actually still kind of a big circumference. I don't think that's 12 inches. I wonder if it's 10. So the interchangeable sets come with either 1 inch or I think 2 inch long needle tips. Oh, these are my interchangeables. This isn't the fixed set I have. And they come with different cord lengths. So I have been able to use them right through the cuff. Cuffs, I find I'm not knitting any super tiny cuffs. I don't think that would work for maybe like a kid's sweater. But for adult sweaters, I mean, they can stretch quite a bit. And when I use my shorter cord, that's not a problem. So I do not have to switch to double pointeds or magic loop. They kind of work for me the whole way down. And I know I'll get asked, these ones are the Chow Gu ones, and that is my favorite interchangeable needle set. I really like the sharp tips, and they have a really smooth join from the cord to the needle tip that the yarn never catches on it. And their cords are really flexible and smooth, and they never get a bent kink in them. I've had other sets where they will get like a little corner in them, and I don't like them. So those are the ones I like. And for part 2 of the question regarding jogless stripes, do you use your technique of lifting the stitch from the previous row on self-striping yarns as well? I don't. I let self-striping yarns do their thing. The nice thing about self-striping yarns is they kind of melt from one color to the next. There is a little bit of like a fade from the transition from one to the next. So I don't find it to be a hard line of all of a sudden you've switched. So I don't even notice when it makes that leap. And also, it's not going to be necessarily perfectly in the same spot every time. So you're not going to notice this line of like tunk, 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 going up your project, if you know what I mean. So for me, life's too short. I do not worry about it. Now, that being said, all self-striping yarns are different. I have the few I have used, and I haven't needed to do that. If you are trying out a different self-striping yarn that maybe has a stronger line of demarcation, it certainly wouldn't hurt to do it if you feel it looks better. So that's kind of nice to keep in your back pocket. All right. I just bought my first drop spindle and have been loving being a beginner at something new. I noticed in your interview with Jillian Moreno that she talked a lot about knowing as much as you could about your default yarn. Just out of curiosity, how long did it take you to start consistently spinning your default yarn? And how did you start to know it was your default yarn? I feel like this kind of happened right out the gate for me. I never went through, so most new spinners, the first yarn they spin will be super chunky and thick and thin. I have shown in a previous episode my first skein of yarn that I strangled the life out of. I was thin right out the gate. Like, just like, I think, yeah, I kind of like squeezed the life out of it. And I have found for me that tends to be my most comfortable is spinning it pretty fine. My default yarn lands solidly around a sport weight. And so, yeah, I feel like that happened fairly quickly. I would say within the first year, you know, I wasn't spinning nearly as much as I do now in that first year. So it's so hard to gauge timelines like that if you're spinning occasionally. That's just kind of where I settled. And how did you start to know? I think part of it is just in the beginning, you only have so much information and you just want to spin yarn, so you do. And the skeins have similarities, and it's like, you know, I guess that's how you know that. This is not my most eloquent answer. Yeah, I think I was just spinning to spin, and they kind of fell in line to all coming out to be right around a sport weight, sometimes a fingering weight. And it's definitely easier for me to be more consistent the finer I spin. Right now I'm practicing on going thicker. I showed this skein last week where I very purposely worked on spinning it thicker and I'm really enjoying it. I've actually started another spin now. I am planning some hand spun knits for my kids. So my daughter's birthday is coming up next month, and she's obsessed with everything like pink, purple, fuchsia. So this is 100% USA raised and grown fin from Spindelicious. This is her Sugar Plum Fairy colorway. So I spun this up last year, and it's right around a sport weight. And I am gonna knit something for Olive out of this. And so I found some stash fiber that's all blues and greens because my son loves blues and greens. And I am kind of going thicker for his. It's gonna be similar to this. And I am just really enjoying it. I'm not as consistent, but I love how squishy it is, and it's super fun. So I just tried to like lasso this around my mannequin. It did not work out for me. Okay. So yeah, I guess I hope that answers your question. I think it's just time, and I think what happens is most spinners, there is a place that you don't have to fight it. It just naturally, that's how much fiber you tend to draft out, and it's the yarn that's just like you can mindlessly make without a lot of mental effort going into it. But that being said, everything's going to affect that, the fiber preparation, the type of fiber, staple length, all that good stuff. So yeah, I hope that was somewhat helpful. All right, next question. I know you stopped doing the weekly shawl triads. I just kind of forgot. I just realized when I saw this question, I was like, oh yeah, I just like dropped that off. So my apologies. But I wonder if you might do one again with a giant shawl. Specifically, I knit up a honey moss shawl and I love it. It's so cozy. I curl up in it every time it's cold, but as a fellow short person, I feel like I look a bit deranged in it and would appreciate tips for styling such a big, cozy, beautiful piece. Thank you. So yes, that is one of the reasons why I picked honey moss today. So this one is long. It has a really long wingspan. So this is one of my favorite shawl shapes. It is an asymmetrical shawl that is started at a corner and you increase along one edge. And I love to mix up very different stitch patterns in this shawl shape. So this one has this beautiful big honeycomb cabled pattern, and then at the end it has one of my all-time favorite lace stitch patterns, and it's done with, I think this is Aran weight. It's either Aran or worsted. I think it's Aran. So it's a big, very cozy shawl. So because it is such a long wingspan, and if you are on the shorter or more petite side, what I actually will do with that really long wingspan is I will wrap it around and tuck, I'm gonna take that over more, and tuck it up under the other side, because I find what can happen is that big long tail can just like hang down and be too much for some people. And then I still have this generous side, so I'll just grab the corner here and wrap that around just like that, and there we go. That is how I would style it. So this is honey moss, and I will of course link it below. All right. Hi Andrea. I'm curious about the March to May knit along that you talked about in a past episode. How does this work? What is the project? When will more information be available? So yay, perfect timing. I actually just started setting up the forums today. So let's start about what is the DRK March to May knit along. So I started this knit along. I actually think the first one was at the start of the pandemic. If I remember correctly, I think it was right when we went into shutdown and everything was feeling pretty overwhelming and a little bit bleak. And so I had a massive sweater sale and started an impromptu knit along, and it was so amazing, so much fun. I feel like There was a lot of just like friendships coming together, people just like navigating the bizarre time that we were all going through and are still all going through with the pandemic. And so it was really, really amazing. So I then started getting emails like, will you ever do a shawl one? And so last year we made it sweaters and shawls. So what a knit along is, if you are new to knit alongs, is people gather together virtually or in person back in the day. And we all choose something similar to knit. Sometimes it's just a single pattern, like the DRK Spin It to Knit It knit along that is also going on right now, linked below. We are all knitting the same pattern, the DRK Everyday Socks. But it can also just be a theme. So for the DRK, which is Drea Renee Knits, if you did not know, when I'm referring to it, March to May knit along, that is any of my sweater patterns or any of my shawl patterns. Now, these knit alongs got pretty big, and that's a lot of patterns to choose from. And so it was a little overwhelming to try and group the sweaters with the shawls, especially because sometimes you want to find people who are also knitting something similar to what you're knitting. So we have two forums so that you can chat in either. There's the sweater forum and the shawl forum. We also host it over on Instagram, just in case there's anybody who doesn't want to or who can't participate over in the Ravelry forums. You can go onto Instagram and there's a hashtag, and all of this information I will send out in my newsletter actually this coming Tuesday, a week from this past Tuesday. My brain sometimes doesn't keep up with my mouth. So where was I? On Tuesday, I will send out all of the information, like what, when, where, all that good stuff. We usually get some pretty amazing prizes. So at the end, we have a forum where you can post all of your finished sweaters and shawls, and I use a random number generator and we pick some winners for some really amazing prizes. I already have 2 prizes that I have gathered this past week that are really exciting. And yeah, it's just a great way to work on projects. I find for me, before I started designing, knit-alongs were such a great way for me to finish projects, because when you're knitting with other people, there is just that excitement that builds and everyone cheers each other on. It's also great, you know, we're always happy to help with pattern questions. On the last page of my patterns, you can always find my pattern support email. But there's so much camaraderie and helpfulness that happens in the knit-along forums, where people just cheer each other on and help explain things. It's a great place to share like modifications maybe for different things that might come up. It's just, yeah, it's just really, really fun. And yeah. So all of that information will go out on Tuesday, but I did already set up the forums just so that I can get all that started. This is my biggest knit along of the year, so there's some organization that has to happen. So I'll link the Ravelry forums below, but definitely make sure you sign up to my newsletter, because there's gonna be some special things happening that you won't wanna miss. So there's a link for that below as well. And I think that's it for questions. So I already talked a little bit about hand spun. I finished my spin for the DRK Spin It to Knit It knit along for my DRK Everyday Socks. This is my 100% Dorset from Akara Yarns in the colorway Peacock. And I got so excited to cast on that I completely forgot to cut my yardage. So I don't know how much I have. I got 90 grams. By when all was said and done, 90 grams is what I ended up with for my spin. But yeah, I have 2 different ways I count yardage. I have the Acreworks Super Skater, but my counter on that has been not working great. So I have to figure out what's going on there. So that kind of pooped out on me halfway through winding my skein. So I don't know I didn't get a count from that. And then I have a Fiber Artist Supply yardage counter that the yarn runs through there while you cake it up. And I forgot to put it through there because I just got excited and was like, well. And I haven't taken any of the yarn specs. It's a pretty solid fingering weight yarn. I could just tell by knitting it, and I've knit these socks so many times, and I've knit a lot, so I feel like I can just kind of gauge that also by looking and feeling and knitting it. But I am gonna take some specs. Like, I'm curious about my twist angle and all that. Twist angle I do want to put down because I just want to see how these wear, and I think it'll be nice to be able to go back and reference what my twist angle was on my apply. But yeah, so here's my little baby I got done over the weekend. And I will say too, this Dorset is softer knit up than I expected it to be. Yeah, I'm excited. So there we are with that. And I guess that's it today. Oh, I finished a new design. So you can see down there, that is my hand spun shawl, which I'm so excited about. I'm super stoked about how it turned out. And laying with it is I knit up another version out of some commercial yarn I had in my stash. So that is in testing right now and will be coming out during the knit along. So that can be a really exciting option if you want to knit that for the knit along. It should come out with plenty of time to use that to participate with. And then I cast on a new sweater. This is my little swatch. So I just got through the yoke of that yesterday, and I'm into the body. So I've got lots of new designs percolating, which is so much fun. So yeah, I guess that's about it for me. I hope that y'all had a great week, and I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you get to do some making, some sipping on some warm beverages. That's actually what I'm gonna do right now. I am gonna go make some coffee or tea. I haven't decided which. Maybe coffee. I feel like I'm just like not quite waking up today. So I hope you have a great one, and I hope to see you back here next week. Happy knitting.